I'm Sophia Mitchell, 28, a marketing executive in Boston with what I thought was the perfect support system. 2 weeks ago, I left for a business trip to Chicago, excited about my presentation and looking forward to coming home. Then, midway through my flight back, my phone buzzed. The message from Mom read, "We changed all the locks on the front door and also the gate. Don't come home." No explanation, no context. Just 14 words that shattered my world. How does your family go from being your everything to locking you out overnight? Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And hit that subscribe button to join me through this journey of betrayal and unexpected strength. Before everything fell apart, we were what most people would call a close-knit family. My parents, Margaret and Robert Mitchell, my younger brother Ethan, and I shared the kind of bond I thought was unbreakable. We had our issues like any family, but nothing that ever made me question their love. My mom was more than just a parent. She was my confidant and best friend. We spoke almost daily, sharing everything from work drama to relationship advice. My dad was more reserved, but consistently supportive in his quiet way. He showed his love through actions rather than words, fixing things around my apartment, giving practical advice about investments, and always being there when I needed a steady presence. My brother Ethan, 3 years younger at 25, and I had grown closer as adults than we ever were as children. He was studying for his master's degree in engineering and often came to me for career guidance. We had a standing monthly movie night tradition, where we'd catch up on each other's lives over popcorn and the latest Marvel release. 6 months ago, my apartment building suffered major flooding damage, and I faced at least 4 months of renovations. My parents suggested I move into their guest house instead of finding a temporary rental. The guest house sat about 50 yards from the main house on their sprawling property in a quiet Boston suburb. It was a charming one-bedroom cottage my parents had renovated years ago, initially for my grandmother before she passed. The arrangement seemed perfect. I paid them a modest rent, helped with property maintenance, and enjoyed the balance of independence and family connection. I could have my own space while still joining them for dinner a few times a week. Mom and I would have coffee on Sunday mornings on the back patio, and Dad enlisted my help with his vegetable garden. These weren't obligations. They were moments I cherished. My career at Horizon Marketing had been on an upward trajectory for the past year. I'd recently been promoted to senior account executive, which came with more responsibility, higher profile clients, and unfortunately, more travel. The promotion was something my parents had celebrated with me, throwing a small party and gifting me a high-end briefcase I'd been eyeing for months. What they didn't see was the increasing pressure. 14-hour days became my norm, and the stress manifested in disrupted sleep and occasional anxiety attacks I kept to myself. On top of work pressure, my 3-year relationship with Tyler had ended 2 months earlier. He wanted to relocate to Seattle for a dream job. I couldn't imagine leaving Boston and my family. The breakup was amicable but left an emptiness I filled with even more work. Financially, I was stable. My salary was generous, but Boston's housing market meant homeownership remained just out of reach. I was saving diligently for a down payment. Another reason the guest house arrangement had been so attractive. My parents never made me feel like a failure for moving back temporarily. Quite the opposite. Mom had said, "It's the smart decision. Why waste money on rent when you could be building your future?" The Chicago trip came during this already stressful period. Horizon had landed a potential contract with a major retail chain, and as the lead on the account, I needed to deliver a presentation that would secure the partnership. The stakes were enormous. This client could increase our agency's revenue by 30%. I left on a Monday morning, kissing Mom goodbye as she handed me a travel mug of coffee and a container of homemade cookies for the hotel room. Dad drove me to the airport, giving me his typical pep talk about knocking their socks off. It was an ordinary, loving farewell. During my 2 weeks in Chicago, communication with my family was sporadic. The preparation was intense, with last-minute changes to the presentation and daily strategy sessions that stretched into midnight. I managed a few quick texts to Mom, usually late at night. "Still working. Miss you. How's everything?" Her responses were enthusiastic but vague. "All good here. Making some changes around the house. You'll be surprised when you get back." I assumed she meant the kitchen renovation she'd been contemplating, or perhaps the landscaping project Dad had mentioned. The presentation went brilliantly. We secured the contract, and my team celebrated with an expensive dinner. I called my parents with the good news, but strangely, only reached my dad, who sounded distracted, and ended the call quickly, saying Mom was busy with their guest. I thought nothing of it, assuming a neighbor had dropped by. My flight home was delayed by 3 hours, already putting me in a tense mood. I was exhausted but satisfied, looking forward to sleeping in my own bed in the guest house. As the plane began its descent into Boston, I switched my phone off airplane mode. That's when the message arrived. We changed all the locks on the front door and also the gate. Don't come home. I stared at the screen, certain there was some mistake. I called immediately, but it went to voicemail. I tried my dad, then my brother, no answer from either. By the time the plane landed, I'd sent a dozen increasingly panicked messages. My only response was from Mom. Please respect our decision. We'll send your things. The taxi ride from the airport was a blur of confusion and rising dread. What could possibly have happened in 2 weeks to warrant this? Had I done something unforgivable without realizing it? Was someone ill and somehow blaming me? None of the scenarios I imagined made any sense. Rain started falling as the taxi approached the familiar tree-lined street where I'd grown up. I asked the driver to stop at the gate that separated our long driveway from the road, a gate that had rarely been closed in the past, let alone locked. The security gate loomed before me, its wrought iron design suddenly seeming more fortress-like than decorative. Raindrops pelted my face as I punched in the code I'd used for years. Nothing happened. The small keypad blinked red, denying me entry to what had always been home. I tried again, thinking perhaps I'd made a mistake in my anxious state. Again, denial. The security system had indeed been changed, just as my mother's text had stated. Standing there in the increasing downpour, I felt the first wave of genuine fear wash over me. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a prank. This was deliberate exclusion. Hello? I called out, pressing the intercom button repeatedly. Mom? Dad? It's Sophia. Please answer me. The rain soaked through my thin blazer as minutes ticked by with no response. My suitcase and laptop bag grew heavy, and my professional pumps sank slightly into the muddy ground. I'd been standing there nearly 15 minutes when the porch light flickered on, illuminating a figure moving toward the gate. My mother's silhouette appeared, walking slowly down the long driveway. Relief flooded me momentarily. Surely she would explain this bizarre situation, open the gate, and welcome me home. But as she drew closer, the unfamiliar coldness in her expression extinguished that hope. Mom? My voice cracked. What's going on? I don't understand. She stopped several feet from the gate, maintaining a distance that felt both physical and emotional. Her face, usually warm and expressive, appeared mask-like and remote. This wasn't the woman who had hugged me goodbye 2 weeks earlier. Sophia. Her voice was flat, devoid of its usual affection. I told you not to come. But why? What happened? Did I do something wrong? The questions tumbled out as rainwater streaked down my face, mingling with tears I couldn't hold back. We need space, she said vaguely, glancing back toward the house where my father stood in the doorway, deliberately avoiding eye contact. This isn't a good time for you to be here. Through the rain-blurred windows of the second floor, I spotted Ethan's face, a mixture of discomfort and what looked strangely like guilt in his expression. He quickly stepped back from view when our eyes met. Space from what? I've been gone for 2 weeks. My confusion turned to pleading. Mom, it's pouring rain. I'm exhausted. Can we at least talk about whatever this is? You need to find somewhere else to stay tonight, she said firmly. Your things will be packed up by tomorrow. You can collect them then. Where am I supposed to go at midnight? The absurdity of the situation struck me fully. All my stuff is in the guest house. You have friends, Sophia. You've always been good at making arrangements. The coldness in her tone felt like a physical blow. This isn't up for discussion tonight. Before I could respond, she turned and walked back toward the house where my father waited. Neither of them looked back as they closed the door, leaving me standing alone in the rain, locked out of my own home. The Uber driver who picked me up 20 minutes later found me huddled under a nearby tree, soaked and shell-shocked. Rough night? He asked sympathetically as I climbed into his car. my wet clothes immediately dampening his seats. "You have no idea," I managed to reply, directing him to the nearest hotel. The Hampton Inn had a single room available, a small mercy in an otherwise cruel night. The desk clerk gave me a curious look as I checked in, a professional woman in soaked business attire. No luggage beyond a dripping laptop bag. Mascara streaked down her face. I must have looked like a walking disaster. In the sterile hotel room, the full weight of what had happened crashed over me. I peeled off my wet clothes and wrapped myself in the rough hotel robe before collapsing onto the bed. The tears came in earnest, then deep, body-shaking sobs that left me gasping for air. Between crying jags, I continued sending messages to every family member. "Mom, please tell me what I did wrong. Whatever it is, we can talk about it. Dad, please. I don't understand what's happening. Call me. Ethan. What's going on with Mom and Dad? Why won't anyone talk to me?" Hours passed with no responses, except one brief message from Ethan around 3 a.m. "It's not what you think. Give them time." What was that supposed to mean? Not what I think? I had no idea what to think. That was the problem. My family had transformed from loving and supportive to cold strangers in the span of 2 weeks, with no explanation whatsoever. Sleep eventually came in fitful bursts, interrupted by anxiety dreams where I ran through endless corridors of locked doors. When morning light filtered through the cheap hotel curtains, I felt hollow and disoriented, as if the previous night might have been a particularly vivid nightmare. But the reality was confirmed by the hotel room surroundings and my still damp clothes draped over the shower rod. This was really happening. After a shower that couldn't quite wash away my distress, I put on my rumpled clothes from the previous day and checked out of the hotel. I decided to return to my parents' house in daylight. Perhaps the morning would bring clarity or at least a conversation. The taxi dropped me at the gate again, which remained firmly locked. This time, however, I noticed something new. Several cardboard boxes stacked neatly on the front porch. My possessions, I realized with a sickening jolt. They had actually packed up my things. I pressed the intercom again, and this time my mother answered almost immediately, as if she'd been waiting for my arrival. "Your boxes are on the porch. The gate will open for exactly 2 minutes. Get what you can and leave." Her voice through the speaker sounded mechanical. True to her word, the gate buzzed and swung open. I hurried up the driveway, painfully aware of the temporary nature of this access. As I approached the house, the front door remained firmly shut. Through the side window, I could see my mother watching, arms crossed, expression unchanged from the previous night. "Mom, please," I called through the door. "Can we just talk? I don't even know what I did." The door opened a few inches, revealing my father's face. Unlike my mother's cold detachment, his expression held discomfort and what might have been regret. "Your mom thinks it's best this way," he said quietly, not meeting my eyes. "Sometimes people need to, follow different paths." "What paths?" "Dad, this makes no sense. 2 weeks ago, everything was fine." He glanced nervously over his shoulder. "I can't talk right now, Sophia. Just take your things, please." The door closed firmly, the lock clicking into place with devastating finality. Numbly, I began gathering the boxes. There were 6 in total, containing a random assortment of my possessions from the guest house, clothes, books, toiletries, a few framed photos. Important items were missing: my grandmother's jewelry box, my winter coats, most of my shoes. The haphazard packing job suggested rush and indifference. As I struggled to carry what I could toward the gate, I became aware of neighbors watching from across the street. Mrs. Abernathy, who had known me since childhood, stood on her porch with a puzzled expression. Mr. Chen from next door slowed his car as he drove past, curiosity evident in his stare. The humiliation burned as hot as my confusion. I was being treated like an unwelcome intruder in my own family home, and there were witnesses to my shame. I managed to get 3 boxes through the gate before it closed automatically, leaving the others on the driveway. When I tried the intercom again to request more time, no one answered. After 15 minutes of futile attempts, I gave up and called another Uber, unable to carry even these 3 boxes any significant distance. As I waited, my phone finally chimed with a message from Jessica. My closest friend since college. Hey, where are you? Your brother just called me asking if you're staying with me. What's happening? In that moment, Jessica's concern was the first human warmth I'd felt since this nightmare began. The tears returned as I typed a reply. I don't know what's happening. My family locked me out. Can I please come over? Jessica's spare room became my sanctuary over the following days. Her one-bedroom apartment in downtown Boston wasn't designed for 2 people, but she rearranged her living space to accommodate me and my 3 salvaged boxes without complaint. Stay as long as you need, she insisted, helping me hang my wrinkled business clothes in a corner of her closet. But you have to tell me what the hell is going on. The problem was, I didn't know. I recounted every detail of the previous 2 weeks, searching for any clue, any misstep that might explain my family's shocking rejection. Jessica listened with increasing disbelief. This doesn't make sense, she said finally. Your mom calls you her best daughter all the time. Your dad brags about your promotion to everyone. Something else must be happening. My attempts to contact my family continued relentlessly. Calls went unanswered. Texts received no replies. Emails bounced back from my mother's address, indicating she had blocked me. My father's phone seemed perpetually off. Ethan responded occasionally with frustratingly vague messages like, "It's complicated," and "not a good time." The situation began affecting my work performance almost immediately. I missed deadlines, zoned out during meetings, and struggled to focus on even basic tasks. The triumph of landing the Chicago client faded as my supervisor called me into her office to discuss recent performance concerns. "You're on thin ice, Sophia," she warned. "I don't know what's going on in your personal life, but you need to compartmentalize better. This isn't the executive we promoted." I nodded mechanically, promising improvement I wasn't sure I could deliver. How could I explain that my family had inexplicably erased me from their lives? It sounded so implausible that I'd begun questioning my own sanity. A week into my exile, Jessica sat down beside me on her sofa one evening, her expression unusually serious as she handed me her iPad. "I think you should see this," she said quietly. "I've been keeping an eye on your family's social media." The screen displayed my mother's Facebook page, open to a photo album titled Family Dinner. With growing unease, I scrolled through images of my parents, brother, and an unfamiliar young woman around my age seated at our dining table. They were smiling broadly, raising wine glasses in a toast. The woman had long brown hair, similar to mine, and wore a sweater I recognized with a jolt. It was mine, left behind in the guest house. "Who is she?" I whispered, continuing to scroll through more photos. The woman appeared in picture after picture, helping my mother in the kitchen, playing chess with my father, laughing with Ethan in the backyard. In one particularly painful image, she stood in what was clearly my guest house, rearranging items on shelves that had held my possessions. According to the tags, "Her name is Amanda Wilson," Jessica replied, watching my reaction carefully. "Your mom has tagged her in at least 20 photos in the past month." I scrolled back through the timeline, noting that the first photos of Amanda appeared about 3 months ago initially in group settings that included neighbors and family friends, then gradually in more intimate family gatherings. The captions evolved from "Lovely dinner with the Wilsons and their daughter Amanda" to "Sunday Funday with our Amanda." Our Amanda. The possessive pronoun felt like a knife twist. Comments below the most recent photos were equally disturbing. My mother's friend Susan had written, "Amanda fits so perfectly in your family, like the good daughter every mother dreams of," to which my mother had replied with a heart emoji, "And she truly is a blessing. Always makes time for family." The implication was clear and devastating. Amanda had replaced me. I scrolled further and found something even more unsettling, a photo of Amanda sleeping in what was unmistakably my childhood bedroom, not the guest house. The caption read, "Peace at last. So grateful." "I don't understand," I said, my voice barely audible. "Who is this person? Why is she in my house, wearing my clothes, sleeping in my room?" "I did some digging," Jessica admitted. "She's apparently the daughter of your parents' old neighbors, the ones who moved away last year." According to her Facebook profile, she moved back to Boston about 4 months ago, after her parents died in a car accident. The timeline aligned with when I'd noticed my mother mentioning a new friend who understood the importance of family. At the time, I'd thought nothing of it. My mother was always befriending people and bringing them into our lives temporarily. But this was something entirely different. I needed more information, and there was only one person who might provide it. I texted Ethan. I need to see you. Coffee tomorrow. Just you and me. Please. To my surprise, he agreed, suggesting a cafe halfway across town someplace Mom and Dad never go, he specified, which only increased my anxiety. The following morning, I spotted my brother the moment I entered the cafe. He had chosen a table in the farthest corner, his shoulders hunched, eyes darting nervously toward the door. When he saw me, his expression was a complicated mixture of guilt, relief, and apprehension. "You look terrible," he said as I sat down, then winced at his own tactlessness. "Sorry. This is all really messed up. Tell me what's happening, Ethan," I demanded, keeping my voice low but intense. "Who is Amanda Wilson, and why is she living in my room?" He fidgeted with his coffee cup, avoiding my gaze. "She's Gary and Linda Wilson's daughter. You remember them? Lived next door for like 15 years before moving to Florida. I remember the Wilsons. They never mentioned a daughter. She was away at boarding school, then college in California. Barely ever visited." He took a long sip of coffee before continuing. "Anyway, she showed up a few months ago, said her parents died in an accident, and she had nowhere to go. Mom invited her for dinner, then to stay in the guest house temporarily while she looked for an apartment. So she was staying in my guest house before I moved back in?" The timeline was becoming clearer. "Yeah. She had to move into the main house when you came back. That's when things got weird." He lowered his voice further. "Mom started spending all her time with Amanda. They cook together, garden together, go shopping. Amanda calls every day when she's not there, remembers every anniversary and birthday, brings little gifts for no reason. She's like the perfect daughter." The words stung, especially coming from my brother. "And I'm not?" Ethan looked uncomfortable. "Mom says Amanda appreciates family more than you do, that you're always too busy with work, that you take them for granted." He held up his hands defensively at my expression. "I'm not saying I agree. I'm just telling you what Mom says. That's absurd. I moved back home to be closer to all of you. But then you were gone for 2 weeks in Chicago," he pointed out. "Meanwhile, Amanda was here planning Mom's garden renovation, cooking Dad's favorite meals, helping me with job applications. She's present in a way you haven't been lately." The unfairness of this assessment took my breath away. "I was working, Ethan. I have a career I've built over years, and it's not like I was gone for months. It was 2 weeks." "I know," he said miserably. "But Amanda has been feeding Mom all these ideas about how real family members prioritize each other above everything else. How her own daughter would never put work before family time. Mom's completely bought into it. And Dad? You know how he is. He goes along with whatever makes Mom happy. And Amanda flatters him constantly, asks for his advice about everything." I sat back, trying to process this information. So some stranger waltzes in, love bombs our parents, and suddenly I'm locked out of my own home? There has to be more to this. Ethan hesitated, then pulled out his phone. "I started getting suspicious last week. Amanda's story about her parents didn't quite add up different details each time she mentioned it. So I did some digging." He slid the phone across the table, displaying a social media profile. "This is a support group for people who've had similar experiences with Amanda Wilson." I scrolled through post after post describing eerily similar situations. Amanda identifying vulnerable families, especially those with adult children who lived away or traveled frequently. She would integrate herself, become indispensable, then gradually drive wedges between family members until the original children were marginalized or excluded entirely. "She's done this before," I whispered, feeling simultaneously validated and horrified. "At least 3 times that I can find evidence of," Ethan confirmed. "She stays until she's extracted whatever she wants, money, property, emotional supply, then disappears to find her next family. We have to show this to Mom and Dad." Ethan shook his head. I tried hinting at some concerns. Mom shut me down immediately, said I was being manipulated by you, that I was ungrateful for all Amanda has done for our family. He looked genuinely frightened. "Sophia, she's turning them against me too. Last week, Amanda mentioned that her friend's brother is looking for an engineering intern. Suddenly, Dad's pressuring me to apply, saying I should be more like Amanda and network better. The cafe seemed to spin around me as the full scope of the situation became clear. This wasn't just about me being replaced, it was something far more calculated and sinister. Amanda Wilson was systematically inserting herself into my family while methodically pushing out the actual children. We need to investigate her more thoroughly, I said, my marketing brain shifting into strategy mode. Background checks, previous addresses, employment history, anything that might help us understand what she really wants. I think it's money, Ethan said quietly. I overheard her asking Dad about his retirement accounts, suggesting she could help manage them, since she supposedly worked in finance before. The pieces were starting to fit together, but I still didn't have enough information to formulate a plan. As Ethan and I parted ways, promising to share any new discoveries, I felt the first stirrings of determination beneath my hurt and confusion. This wasn't just about me being rejected by my family anymore. It was about protecting them from someone who clearly meant them harm. The pain of exclusion grew more acute with each passing day. After my meeting with Ethan, I decided to make one more attempt at direct communication. I wrote a heartfelt letter to my parents, pouring out my confusion, hurt, and love for them. I described my achievements in Chicago, shared memories of our close relationship, and pleaded for a chance to understand what had changed. I avoided mentioning Amanda directly, fearing it might trigger immediate rejection of my message. Jessica drove me to deliver the letter, waiting in the car as I approached the now familiar gate. This time, I simply slipped the sealed envelope through the bars and retreated without attempting to enter or call out. It felt like leaving a message in a bottle, a desperate communication with little hope of response. 3 days passed in silence. On the 4th day, my phone rang, displaying my father's number. My heart raced as I answered. Dad? I couldn't keep the hope from my voice. Sophia. His voice was strained, formal. I got your letter. Thank you for calling, I said carefully. Did Mom read it too? He sighed heavily. She's not ready to talk yet. I thought you deserved at least some response. Can you please tell me what I did wrong? The question that had been haunting me for weeks. It's not about one specific action, Sophia. Your mother feels. She feels that family hasn't been your priority, that you've taken us for granted while pursuing your career. He sounded as if he were reciting lines someone else had written. Dad, that's not fair. I've always made time for family. I moved into the guest house specifically to be closer to you all. And then you were gone for 2 weeks, he countered, the argument sounding rehearsed. Meanwhile, Amanda has shown what it means to truly value family connections. The mention of her name sent a chill through me. Dad, you've known me for 28 years. You've known Amanda for, 3 months? How can you possibly choose her over your own daughter? No one's choosing anyone over, he began. But I could hear my mother's voice in the background, sharp and insistent. Look, I need to go. Your mother thinks it's best if we give each other space for a while. Maybe for the holidays. Wait, I interrupted, my voice breaking. Are you saying I'm not invited for Christmas? The Mitchell family Christmas celebration was legendary. 3 days of traditions, special meals, and togetherness that had never once been interrupted, not even when I was studying abroad. It might be better this way, he said weakly. Less tension. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Dad, it's Christmas. Our family Christmas. I'm sorry, Sophia. I need to go. The call ended abruptly, leaving me staring at my phone in stunned disbelief. The next blow came via social media. My brother's previously frequent texts stopped entirely. When I checked his Instagram, I discovered he had restricted my access. Through Jessica's account, I could see recent photos he'd posted, including one of him and Amanda selecting a Christmas tree with my parents, captioned, "Family tradition continues." The sight of this stranger participating in our sacred family ritual while I was excluded felt like a physical assault. Desperate for any connection, I reached out to my mother's sister, Aunt Linda, who lived in Vermont. We had always been close, and she might have insights into what was happening, but her response was cool and distant. I've heard you're going through some things, Sophia. Your mother says you need time to sort out your priorities. I hope you figure things out. It became clear that a narrative about me was being constructed and distributed throughout the family and friend circle, a story where I was selfish, neglectful, and deserved my exclusion. I discovered this was happening when Rachel, my mother's longtime friend, accidentally copied me on an email intended for someone else, containing the phrase, "Such a shame about Sophia abandoning her family responsibilities." I had never abandoned anything. I had simply gone on a business trip. The psychological impact became increasingly difficult to manage. I began seeing a therapist, Dr. Harrison, who specialized in family estrangement. During our sessions, I oscillated between confusion, rage, and profound grief. "I keep having this recurring nightmare," I told her during one session. "I'm standing outside my family home, but it's made entirely of glass. I can see everyone inside: my parents, my brother, and this woman, Amanda. They're laughing, eating dinner, doing all our normal family things. They can see me too, but they pretend not to notice as I pound on the glass, screaming to be let in. Eventually, the glass turns to ice, and I realize I'm freezing to death while they stay warm inside, completely indifferent." Dr. Harrison nodded sympathetically. "Your subconscious is processing the rejection and replacement you're experiencing. The glass represents the painful transparency of seeing yourself being replaced while being powerless to stop it." My work situation deteriorated further. Despite my best efforts to compartmentalize, I missed a crucial deadline for the Chicago client, the very account I had worked so hard to secure. My supervisor placed me on probation, her disappointment evident. "I've never seen such a dramatic performance decline," she said. "Whatever is happening in your personal life, you need to address it or consider taking a leave of absence." The physical manifestations of stress became impossible to ignore. I lost 15 pounds in 3 weeks, my clothes hanging loosely on my frame. Sleep became elusive, my mind racing with questions and scenarios throughout the night. Frequent headaches and a persistent knot in my stomach became my constant companions. Jessica watched my decline with growing alarm. "You need to eat something," she would insist, placing food in front of me that I could barely touch. "You're disappearing before my eyes, Sophia." The holiday season amplified my pain exponentially. Christmas decorations appeared throughout the city, reminding me of all the traditions I would miss: helping Dad hang lights on the house, baking cookies with Mom using my grandmother's recipes, the Christmas Eve pajama exchange with Ethan. These weren't just activities. They were the foundation of my sense of belonging and identity. Through social media monitoring that felt increasingly masochistic yet impossible to stop, I witnessed Amanda systematically inserting herself into each of these traditions. A photo appeared of her wearing the special apron my grandmother had made for me, flour on her cheeks as she and my mother rolled cookie dough. Another showed her helping my father arrange the nativity scene that had been my special responsibility since childhood. But the most devastating discovery came when I noticed a small detail in the background of one such photo: a trash can visible through the kitchen doorway, containing what looked like crumpled wrapping paper and a picture frame. Using image enhancement software from work, I confirmed my worst fear. It was my childhood artwork and school photos being discarded. My mother was literally throwing away mementos of my life to make room for Amanda's new presence. The evidence of my erasure continued to mount. My brother accidentally revealed during a brief text exchange that Amanda was now sleeping in my childhood bedroom, not as a temporary arrangement, but permanently. My room had been redecorated to suit her tastes. My remaining possessions either stored in the attic or disposed of. Mom said, "Since you have your own place now, it made sense for Amanda to have a proper room instead of staying in the guest room," he explained, seemingly oblivious to how painful this information would be. "She picked out new curtains and everything. Dad painted it last weekend. The room I had grown up in, where my history lived in the very walls, was being systematically erased and rewritten." It wasn't just my present connection to my family being severed. It was as if they were attempting to erase evidence I had ever been their daughter at all. As Christmas approached, my isolation deepened. Jessica invited me to join her family celebration in Maine, but the thought of being a charity case at someone else's family gathering felt almost as painful as being excluded from my own. Instead, I booked a hotel room in downtown Boston, telling myself the solitude was preferable to witnessing others' family joy. On Christmas Eve, sitting alone in my sterile hotel room with takeout Chinese food, I scrolled through social media one last time before planning to delete the apps from my phone, a small act of self-preservation. That's when I saw it. My mother's public post showing my family gathered around our traditional Christmas Eve dinner. Amanda sat in my usual chair, wearing a sweater I recognized as mine, raising a glass in the annual toast my father always proposed. The caption broke something fundamental inside me. So grateful for our perfect family this Christmas. Some people come into your life and show you what a real daughter's love looks like. Number. Blessed number. Real family. The comment section overflowed with warm wishes and compliments about what a lovely addition Amanda was to the family. One particularly cutting comment from my mother's friend Diane read, "Amanda fits so perfectly in your family, much more present than Sophia ever was," to which my mother had responded, "Some daughters choose career over family. Others, like Amanda, understand what truly matters. We've never been happier." The public nature of this rejection, this replacement, was the final blow. My family hadn't just privately decided to replace me. They were announcing it to the world, rewriting our history to justify their actions. In their new narrative, I was the villain who deserved exclusion, and Amanda was the perfect daughter they had always deserved. I turned off my phone and curled into a ball on the hotel bed, feeling more completely alone than I had ever thought possible. The family who had been my foundation, my safe harbor, my very definition of home, had not only locked me out physically, they had locked me out of their hearts and erased me from their story. 3 days after Christmas, still numb from holiday isolation, I literally bumped into Rachel Donovan at the grocery store. Rachel had been my mother's closest friend for 20 years, practically an honorary aunt throughout my childhood. She looked startled to see me, her shopping basket nearly dropping from her hands. "Sophia, I didn't expect to run into you." Her discomfort was palpable as she glanced around as if checking whether anyone was watching our encounter. "Hi, Rachel," I replied, attempting normalcy despite the awkwardness. "How were your holidays?" Good. She shifted her weight nervously. "And yours? Did you go somewhere nice?" The question revealed she knew I hadn't been with my family. "I stayed in Boston," I said simply. "Worked through some projects." Rachel nodded too quickly. "That's nice. Always the career woman." The phrase carried an undercurrent of judgment that hadn't been there in previous years when she'd praised my ambition. As she made motions to continue shopping, I gently touched her arm. "Rachel, can I ask you something? What have you heard about why I'm not welcome at home anymore?" Her expression confirmed my suspicions before she spoke. "Oh, Sophia, I don't want to get in the middle of family matters." "Please," I pressed. "I genuinely don't understand what's happening, and no one will talk to me." Rachel's resolve wavered. She checked her watch, then sighed. "I have a few minutes. Let's get coffee." At a small table in the store's cafe area, Rachel finally revealed what she'd been told. "Your mother says you abandoned them," she began hesitantly. "That you made it clear your career was more important than family. That you refused to participate in family activities. That you were rude to their houseguest, and that you finally said you wanted nothing more to do with them." I stared at her in shock. "None of that is true. Absolutely none of it. Amanda showed everyone texts from you, Sophia. Terrible things you supposedly wrote about your parents, about how they were suffocating you, how you couldn't wait to move away permanently. I never sent any such texts. I don't even have Amanda's number." The realization struck me with horrifying clarity. "Rachel, those messages were fabricated." Rachel looked uncertain. "But they came from your number. Did anyone actually see my number on the phone? Or did Amanda just say they were from me?" I pressed, watching understanding slowly dawn in her eyes. "She just showed screenshots," Rachel admitted. "But they sounded like you, because Amanda has been living in my house for months, watching how I speak, probably reading my communications with my family. She's been studying me so she could imitate me." The pieces were falling into place with sickening precision. Rachel's expression shifted from doubt to concern. "There have been other things that seemed off. Amanda constantly tells stories about people mistreating her, about being abandoned. She's very convincing, but the details change. And the way she's taken over your mother's life isn't healthy. Margaret barely speaks to anyone else anymore. Rachel, Amanda has done this before, I said urgently. She finds families, inserts herself, isolates the actual children, and then extracts whatever she wants: emotional supply, money, security. She's not who she claims to be. By the time we parted, Rachel looked shaken. I'll pay more attention, she promised, and I'll try to talk to your mother, get her to at least hear your side. This encounter crystallized my understanding. Amanda had conducted a systematic character assassination campaign against me. The community now believed I had abandoned and mistreated my family, justifying my exclusion. I had been cast as the villain in a narrative crafted by a master manipulator. The final confirmation of Amanda's manipulation came 3 days later when I received a call from my Aunt Claire, my father's sister, whom I'd always been close to but hadn't heard from in weeks. Sophia, something strange is happening, she began without preamble. I've been trying to reach your parents for a month, but they're not returning my calls. Then yesterday, I got an email supposedly from your father saying the family needed space from toxic influences and specifically mentioning me. Let me guess the email mentioned Amanda as a positive presence in their lives? I asked. Exactly. But it doesn't sound like your father at all. Robert has never used phrases like emotional drainage or toxic positivity in his life. She paused. I'm also hearing rumors that I supposedly said terrible things about your mother, which is completely false. Amanda is isolating them from everyone who might question her influence, I explained, sharing everything I had learned. She's done it to me. She's working on Ethan. And now she's targeting extended family. Claire's response was immediate and determined. This stops now. I'm coming to Boston tomorrow. We're going to confront this situation directly. The confrontation I had been both dreading and longing for came on a cold January evening. With Claire's support and Rachel's confirmation that my parents would be home for dinner, I made the decision to approach without warning. If we called ahead, Amanda would surely intercept and prevent the meeting. Claire drove us to the familiar gate, which remained locked. This time, however, we had an advantage: Claire's key to the side entrance, given to her years ago for emergencies, still worked. We slipped onto the property as dusk was falling, approaching the brightly lit house where dinner preparations would be underway. Through the kitchen window, I could see the tableau that had haunted my dreams. My mother at the stove, my father setting the table, Ethan chopping vegetables, and Amanda wearing my favorite sweater, arranging flowers in a vase. They looked like a perfect family scene, except for the glaring absence of the actual daughter. Claire squeezed my hand in silent support as I approached the back door and knocked firmly. My mother opened it, her expression transforming from expectation to shock. Sophia, Claire, what are you? We need to talk, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. All of us. Right now. My father appeared behind her, surprise evident. How did you get in? The gate, I used my key, Claire explained. The one you gave me for emergencies. I'd say this qualifies. Before either could respond, Amanda emerged from the kitchen, her face a study in calculated response, initial alarm quickly masked by a victim's expression. Oh, she said softly, I should probably go if this is a family matter. Stay exactly where you are, I replied, meeting her gaze directly for the first time. This very much involves you, Amanda. My brother Ethan appeared from the living room, eyes widening at the confrontation unfolding. Sophia, Aunt Claire, everyone in the living room, Claire directed with an authority that brooked no argument. We're having a family meeting. Remarkably, they complied, perhaps too shocked by our sudden appearance to resist. As we moved to the living room, I noticed Amanda subtly positioning herself beside my mother, physically inserting herself between us, a perfect metaphor for what she'd been doing emotionally for months. What is this about? My mother demanded once we were all seated, her arm protectively around Amanda's shoulders. You can't just break into our home. It was my home too, Mom, I replied, until I was locked out without explanation. You know perfectly well why my mother began, but Claire interrupted. Margaret, Robert, when was the last time we spoke? When was the last time you returned any of my calls? She asked pointedly. My father looked uncomfortable. We've been busy, And after what you said about, I never said anything, Claire cut in. Whatever you think I said was a lie told to you by someone with an agenda. Amanda's expression remained perfectly composed, but I noticed a slight tightening around her eyes, the first crack in her performance. I don't know what you're implying, my mother said stiffly. But Amanda has been nothing but supportive during a difficult time that didn't exist until she created it, I countered. Mom, Dad, everything you think you know about me abandoning or rejecting the family is a lie. Those text messages Amanda showed you, fabricated. The things I supposedly said about wanting distance never happened. That's ridiculous, Amanda interjected, her voice trembling perfectly. Why would I make up such things? Because that's what you do, I said, turning to face her directly. Just like you did with the Hendersons in Chicago, and the Pratts in Seattle, and the Donovans in Philadelphia. Her composure slipped momentarily, surprise flickering across her features at the mention of specific names. I pressed on, addressing my parents. Amanda Wilson is not who she claims to be. Her parents didn't die in a car accident. They're very much alive in Florida. She hasn't worked in finance. She's never held a job for more than 3 months. She's a con artist who specializes in emotional manipulation, particularly of families with adult children she can replace. This is absurd, my mother protested. But I noticed my father's expression shifting, uncertainty creeping into his features. Is it? Claire asked, pulling out a folder. Because we have statements from 3 other families describing exactly the same pattern. Amanda arrives, becomes indispensable, drives wedges between family members, isolates her targets, and eventually extracts what she wants, whether that's money, housing, or emotional supply. Ethan spoke up for the first time. The investment advice she gave Dad last week, about transferring his retirement funds to that special high-yield account she recommended. Did you do it, Dad? My father paled slightly. We were discussing it. She's been targeting your finances, I explained gently. That's her endgame. The emotional manipulation is just how she gets access. Amanda suddenly stood, tears streaming down her face in a masterful performance. I can't believe you're doing this to me, she sobbed. After everything I've done for this family. Margaret, Robert, you know me. You know I would never stop, my mother said. But to my shock, she wasn't addressing me. She was looking at Amanda. Just stop for a moment. In that pause, Amanda's mask slipped fully for the first time. I watched my mother observe what I had already seen, the calculation behind the tears. The subtle shift from victim to predator and back again. Too quick to catch if you weren't looking for it. Is any of this true? My father asked Amanda directly. Her response was a masterclass in manipulation. She didn't answer the question, but instead launched into an emotional appeal about how hurt she was by these baseless accusations, how she'd only ever wanted to be part of a real family, how she couldn't believe they would choose Sophia's lies over all she'd done for them. But the spell was weakening. I could see doubt creeping into my parents' expressions as they watched her performance with newly critical eyes. Show them your phone, I suggested to Amanda. Let's see those texts I supposedly sent you. I deleted them. She responded too quickly. They were too hurtful to keep. How convenient, Claire observed dryly. What about your parents? Ethan asked. Can we call them right now to confirm they're deceased? This is harassment, Amanda declared, gathering her purse. I don't have to subject myself to this. Margaret, I'll call you tomorrow when things have calmed down. As she moved toward the door, my mother's voice stopped her. No, Amanda. If you leave now, don't call. Don't come back. The command hung in the air like a thunderclap. Amanda froze, then turned slowly, her expression transforming into something cold and unfamiliar, a glimpse of her true self breaking through. You're making a mistake, she said, voice suddenly devoid of its usual warmth. After everything I've done, this is how you repay me? By believing her? She gestured dismissively toward me. Her is my daughter, my mother replied quietly. My actual daughter. The confrontation ended with Amanda being escorted from the property, but not before she launched a final verbal assault filled with revelations of her true character, spiteful comments, threats, and declarations that the family would regret choosing that selfish bitch over me. It was the final confirmation of her true nature. a nature my family was seeing clearly for the first time. As the front door closed behind her, silence fell over the living room. My parents looked shell-shocked, my father ashen, my mother on the verge of tears. The magnitude of what had happened, of how thoroughly they had been manipulated into rejecting their own daughter, was beginning to sink in. "Sophia," my father began, his voice breaking. I don't know what to say. Neither did I. The victory of exposing Amanda felt hollow in the face of the damage done to our relationship. Trust had been shattered, wounds inflicted that wouldn't heal with a simple apology. "I think," I said carefully, "that we all have a lot to process. This isn't going to be fixed in one conversation." My mother nodded, tears flowing freely now. "But can we try? Please? Can we at least start?" It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a beginning. The days following Amanda's exposure brought a strange mixture of vindication and continued pain. While the immediate threat had been removed, the aftermath left a landscape of emotional devastation that would take time and effort to navigate. My parents' initial shock gave way to profound shame and regret. My father called daily, his voice heavy with self-recrimination. "I don't understand how we could have been so blind," he repeated. "How we could have chosen a stranger over our own daughter." My mother found it harder to reach out directly, her pride and embarrassment creating barriers that still felt insurmountable. Instead, she sent tentative text messages, "Thinking of you and hope you're doing well." Small olive branches that couldn't begin to address the magnitude of what had occurred. I maintained emotional distance, not yet ready to fully re-enter their lives. The wound was too fresh, the betrayal too complete to simply resume our relationship as if nothing had happened. I continued staying at Jessica's apartment, needing neutral territory while I processed my own complex feelings. "You don't have to forgive them right away," Jessica reassured me as I agonized over how to respond to my parents' overtures. "Or ever, if that's your decision." What they did was profoundly hurtful, regardless of Amanda's manipulation. My unexpected ally in this turbulent time continued to be my Aunt Claire, who appointed herself family mediator. She divided her time between supporting me and helping my parents understand the gravity of what had happened. "They're devastated, Sophia," she reported after spending an afternoon with them. "Your mother isn't eating. Your father can't sleep. They're consumed with guilt. I'm not trying to punish them," I explained. "I just need time to figure out if I can trust them again. If we can rebuild something that's been so fundamentally broken." Claire nodded thoughtfully. "That's completely fair, and it might help them to understand that trust isn't automatically restored just because the deception has been exposed." A turning point came when Claire helped me connect with an online support group for families affected by similar manipulators, people who had experienced the same pattern of infiltration, isolation, and replacement that Amanda had executed so skillfully. The validation of hearing others' stories that mirrored my own provided a framework for understanding what had happened beyond the personal betrayal. Through this group, I met Melissa, whose family in Chicago had fallen prey to Amanda 3 years earlier. "She destroyed my relationship with my parents for nearly a year," Melissa shared. "She's pathologically skilled at finding emotional vulnerabilities and exploiting them." "How did you rebuild afterward?" I asked, desperate for a roadmap through this unfamiliar terrain. "Slowly," she admitted, "with professional help and a lot of painful conversations. But we did rebuild. Different than before, but in some ways stronger, because we learned to recognize manipulation and stand together against it." This perspective proved invaluable as I began considering how to approach reconciliation. It wasn't about pretending the rejection hadn't happened or minimizing its impact. It was about establishing new, healthier dynamics that would prevent similar vulnerabilities in the future. I also learned from the support group about the importance of practical precautions. Amanda had been removed from our immediate family circle, but her pattern suggested she wouldn't simply disappear. She had invested months in establishing her position, and would likely feel entitled to what she perceived as rightfully hers. "Change all passwords, secure financial accounts, and document everything," advised Michael, another group member. "These manipulators often retaliate when exposed." Acting on this advice, I helped my parents conduct a thorough security audit. we discovered alarming vulnerabilities. Amanda had gained access to my father's email account, my mother's social media, and had begun the process of being added to a family checking account as an authorized user. We methodically closed each security gap, changing passwords, updating account recovery options, and implementing two-factor authentication. The most disturbing discovery came when my father reviewed his financial statements and found several unauthorized transfers, small amounts taken from various accounts, and directed to an unfamiliar online payment service. The total wasn't large enough to have raised immediate concerns, but represented a clear pattern of financial exploitation that would likely have escalated. She was testing boundaries, explained the fraud specialist at my father's bank, starting small to see what she could get away with before attempting larger transactions. This tangible evidence of Amanda's true intentions served as a powerful counterpoint to any lingering doubts my parents might have harbored. The romantic idealization of the perfect daughter was irrevocably shattered by the realization that they had been targeted by a practice predator. My brother Ethan proved to be another crucial ally in this period of recovery. Initially caught between loyalties during the conflict, he now threw himself into rebuilding our sibling bond with renewed appreciation. "I should have trusted my instincts," he confessed during one of our newly established weekly dinners. "I knew something felt off about her, especially after she started trying to control who I could date." "What do you mean?" I asked, alarmed by this previously unmentioned detail. "She started making negative comments about Megan, my girlfriend. Subtle at first, little digs about her career choices, her family background, then more direct criticism, always framed as concern for my well-being." He shook his head in disgust. "When I defended Megan, Amanda told Mom and Dad I was being manipulated by her. That's when I really started questioning Amanda's motives." This revelation highlighted another aspect of Amanda's strategy, isolating family members not just from each other, but from any external relationships that might provide perspective or support. It reinforced the importance of maintaining connections outside the family unit as a safeguard against manipulation. As weeks passed, I gradually allowed small steps toward reconciliation with my parents. First came brief, neutral meetings in public places, coffee shops, restaurants, where the setting provided both emotional buffer and escape route if needed. These conversations were initially awkward and stilted, heavy with unspoken grief and regret. "I keep thinking about Christmas," my mother admitted during one such meeting, her hands trembling around her coffee cup. "That you were alone in a hotel room while she was." She couldn't complete the thought, tears filling her eyes. "I'm not ready to talk about Christmas," I replied honestly. "That's still too painful." She nodded, accepting this boundary without protest, a small but significant change from her previous insistence on dictating terms. My father, always more practical than emotional, focused on concrete steps toward repair. "We've changed all the locks," he reported during another meeting. "Installed a security system. Your room," he paused, correcting himself. "Your childhood bedroom has been completely redone. We got rid of everything she touched. The guest house, which had been my home before the estrangement, stood empty. It's yours whenever you want it." My mother offered tentatively. "No pressure, but it's there." I wasn't ready for that step either. Returning to the property where I had been so completely rejected felt premature, like rushing a healing process that needed time and space. Instead, I channeled my energy into rebuilding my career, which had suffered significant damage during the crisis. With emotional stability gradually returning, I approached my supervisor with a comprehensive plan to address my performance issues and recommit to my professional responsibilities. "I've been dealing with a serious family situation," I explained, providing just enough detail to contextualize my recent struggles without oversharing. "It's now resolved, and I'm fully prepared to demonstrate my value to the company." She was cautiously receptive, offering a 90-day improvement plan rather than immediate termination, a lifeline I grabbed with both hands. The structured goals and clear expectations provided welcome focus during a time when other aspects of my life remained in flux. As February turned to March, an unexpected development accelerated the healing process. Aunt Claire discovered that Amanda had begun targeting another family in a nearby suburb, already establishing the same pattern of infiltration and manipulation. "We can't let this happen to someone else," I declared when she shared this information. We need to warn them. This shared mission, protecting others from experiencing our family's pain, provided common purpose where emotional reconciliation still faltered. My parents, brother, and I worked together to document Amanda's methods and approach the new target family with appropriate caution. We're not trying to interfere in your relationships, I carefully explained to Mrs. Peterson, Amanda's newest maternal figure. We just wanted to share our experience so you can make informed decisions. The immediate defensiveness in her response was painfully familiar, the same protective instinct my mother had displayed toward Amanda. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and we left our contact information should questions arise later. 3 days afterward, Mrs. Peterson called my mother, asking hesitant questions about specific behaviors she had begun noticing Amanda's isolation tactics. Her stories that changed slightly with each telling, her subtle criticism of the Petersons' adult children. The pattern was repeating with eerie precision. Working together to protect another family from Amanda's manipulation provided a healing context for my own family. It allowed us to transform our pain into purpose, our shame into vigilance, and most importantly, it positioned us on the same side of a meaningful boundary, united in protecting ourselves and others rather than divided by manipulated perceptions. By early April, tentative family dinners had resumed, not in my parents' home, which still carried too many painful associations, but in neutral restaurants where we could practice being together again. These gatherings were subdued compared to our previous boisterous family celebrations, but they represented critical steps in rebuilding trust and connection. During one such dinner, my mother reached across the table and took my hand, the first physical contact she had initiated since our estrangement. "I keep thinking about something Amanda said early on," she confessed. "She told me that mothers and daughters often grow apart as daughters build their own lives, that it's natural and inevitable. That prepared me to see your independence as rejection." She squeezed my hand. I was so wrong to believe that. "Professional success and family love aren't mutually exclusive," I replied gently. "I've never wanted to choose between them." "We'll never ask you to," my father promised. "Not ever again." It wasn't complete healing that would take much longer, but it was a turning point. The family that had been fractured by manipulation was finding its way back to one another, changed but not destroyed by the experience. By mid-April, our family had established a tenuous new normal. Weekly dinners continued, each one less strained than the last. I had reclaimed my professional standing, successfully completing the improvement plan ahead of schedule and earning cautious praise from my supervisor. My parents had fully secured their finances and home, documenting the extent of Amanda's attempted exploitation for potential legal action. What we hadn't anticipated was Amanda's unwillingness to simply disappear from our lives. The first sign of trouble came when my mother received a series of late-night texts from an unknown number, containing thinly veiled threats and accusations. "You'll regret choosing her over me. You know, she'll just abandon you again for her precious career. I was the daughter who actually cared about you." Though the number was unfamiliar, the distinctive language patterns were unmistakably Amanda's. Similar messages began appearing on my parents' social media accounts, then in my father's email, and finally in letters delivered to their home, each communication escalating in hostility and implied threat. "She's not going to stop," I realized during a family meeting to discuss the harassment. "She invested too much time in us. In her mind, we still owe her something. We should go to the police," my father suggested. But the reality was complicated. Amanda had been careful to keep her messages just this side of actionable implications rather than explicit threats, vague enough to provide plausible deniability. "We need more," my brother argued. "Concrete evidence of her pattern, her identity, deception, and the financial exploitation. Enough to convince authorities this isn't just a family dispute." This realization led to our most ambitious counter-strategy yet. With the help of Aunt Claire and the growing network of Amanda's previous targets, we began building a comprehensive case file documenting every inconsistency in her background, every financial irregularity, every manipulative tactic employed across multiple families. Melissa from Chicago provided bank records showing similar unauthorized transfers from her parents' accounts. The Pratts from Seattle had preserved Amanda's contradictory emails about her alleged deceased parents' emails that contained verifiable falsehoods about funeral homes and accident reports that never existed. Most significantly, Claire managed to locate and contact Amanda's actual parents in Florida, who were very much alive and provided disturbing context to their daughter's behavior. "We've been estranged for years," Mrs. Wilson explained during a difficult phone conversation. "Amanda has struggled with personality disorders since adolescence, refusing treatment and creating elaborate false narratives about her life. We're heartbroken about the pain she's caused other families, but we've been unable to intervene effectively." This information provided crucial missing pieces to our understanding. Amanda wasn't merely opportunistic. She was driven by deeper psychological issues that made her both more dangerous and more predictable in her patterns. Armed with this more complete picture, we consulted with a lawyer specializing in cases involving identity fraud and financial exploitation. His assessment was sobering but constructive. "You have enough for a restraining order at minimum," he advised. "Potentially enough for criminal charges depending on the financial aspects. But the most effective immediate approach might be a formal intervention confronting Amanda with representatives from multiple affected families, offering her a choice between facing legal consequences or seeking professional help." This strategy required careful coordination. Through our support network, we identified 5 families, including our own, who were willing to participate in such a confrontation. Each had experienced similar manipulation from Amanda, and each brought unique evidence to strengthen the collective case. We selected a neutral location, a private room at our lawyer's office, and crafted a careful invitation that would bring Amanda to the meeting without revealing its true purpose. My father made the contact, suggesting he wanted to discuss financial arrangements that might benefit all parties. Language deliberately chosen to appeal to Amanda's exploitative interests. The day of the intervention arrived with tension thick in the air. My parents, brother, and I arrived early, arranging the room with the lawyer's guidance. Representatives from the other families arrived shortly after, each carrying folders of evidence and years of accumulated pain. When Amanda entered, her confident smile faltered momentarily at the unexpected crowd before her practiced composure reasserted itself. "What a surprise," she said smoothly. "I didn't realize this would be a group meeting." "Please sit down, Amanda," my father said quietly. "There are things we need to discuss." What followed was unlike anything I could have imagined. One by one, each family presented their experience with Amanda, the initial charm, the gradual isolation tactics, the financial exploitation, the emotional manipulation. Each account echoed the others with such precision that Amanda's denials became increasingly untenable. "These are all misunderstandings," she insisted initially, her voice maintaining its practiced warmth. "I've only ever tried to help these families who welcomed me when I had nowhere else to go." "Your parents' home in Tampa isn't nowhere to go," replied Mrs. Pratt from Seattle, referencing the address we had verified with the real Wilsons. "They've confirmed you left voluntarily and have refused their attempts at reconciliation." Amanda's expression hardened slightly. "My parents are abusive. They're trying to control me even now by spreading lies." "We have the police reports you claimed to have filed against them," my mother countered gently. "The ones you showed me as proof of their abuse. The precinct has confirmed no such reports exist." As each fabrication was methodically dismantled, Amanda's demeanor underwent a disturbing transformation. The warm, vulnerable persona gave way to increasing agitation, then cold calculation, and finally undisguised hostility. "You ungrateful people," she eventually snapped, abandoning pretense entirely. "I gave you exactly what you wanted, the perfect daughter, the perfect friend, the perfect helper. I was better than your real families ever were. Better than her." She jabbed a finger toward me, eyes blazing with genuine hatred. "That's where you're fundamentally wrong," my father responded with unexpected firmness. "We never wanted a perfect anything. We wanted authentic relationships, not manufactured performances designed to extract what you wanted from us." The intervention culminated in a clear ultimatum. Amanda could either agree to professional psychological assessment and treatment, with legal supervision to ensure compliance, or face legal consequences for the documented fraud and exploitation. "We're not doing this out of malice," explained our lawyer. "The evidence compiled here would support significant criminal charges. We're offering an alternative that addresses the underlying issues while protecting past and potential future victims. Amanda's final decision came as little surprise to those who had experienced her manipulation firsthand. Rejecting the offer of help with a stream of invective, she stormed from the meeting, throwing a final threat over her shoulder. "You'll all regret this. You haven't heard the last from me." But in reality, we had. The comprehensive documentation compiled for the intervention provided more than enough evidence for restraining orders, which were filed immediately. The financial evidence supported fraud reports with multiple law enforcement agencies. Within days, Amanda disappeared from Boston, likely moving on to find more receptive targets in another city. The aftermath of the intervention brought unexpected peace to our fragmented family. Having confronted the source of our division so directly, having stood together against manipulation rather than allowing ourselves to be positioned against one another, we found new ground for healing. My mother, who had been most deeply influenced by Amanda's manipulation, seemed paradoxically most liberated by her departure. "I keep thinking about how completely I believed her," she confessed during a quiet moment. "How I allowed her to convince me that my own daughter didn't love me enough. She exploited very human vulnerabilities," I replied, finding unexpected compassion. Fear of being forgotten, anxiety about growing apart. Those feelings were real, even if the narrative she built around them wasn't. This conversation opened the door to more authentic communication about the underlying insecurities that had made our family vulnerable to Amanda's manipulation. My mother acknowledged her fear that my career success meant I was outgrowing my need for family. My father expressed his worry that his quiet support style was insufficient alongside more demonstrative relationships in my life. "I've never been outgrowing you," I assured them. "I've been growing into the person you raised me to be, someone with ambition and independence, yes, but also with deep roots and connections." These discussions weren't easy, often leaving all of us emotionally drained. But they were necessary excavations of truths long buried beneath assumptions and unspoken fears. They were the foundation of a more resilient relationship, one built on authentic understanding rather than idealized expectations. By early summer, I had moved back into the guest house, reclaiming the space that had once been mine. The main house and grounds had been thoroughly secured with new locks, updated security systems, and carefully restricted access. More importantly, our family had developed psychological security measures as well, greater transparency and communication, regular check-ins about emotional needs, and a shared commitment to questioning narratives that seemed too perfectly aligned with our deepest insecurities or desires. The experience with Amanda had painfully exposed our vulnerabilities, but in doing so, had also revealed our capacity for resilience and growth. The family that emerged from this crucible was not the same one that had entered it. We carried scars from the experience, certainly, but also newfound wisdom and appreciation for the authentic, imperfect connections that had ultimately proven stronger than the perfect illusion Amanda had temporarily offered. 1 year has passed since Amanda Wilson disappeared from our lives, leaving behind both destruction and unexpected opportunity for growth. The journey of rebuilding has not been linear, some days feeling like significant progress, others like painful regression to the raw wounds of betrayal. Throughout it all, however, we have continued moving forward, sometimes together, sometimes in our separate healing processes that eventually reconverge. Family therapy became our anchor during the most turbulent periods. Dr. Marshall, our therapist, specialized in family estrangement and reconciliation, offering both compassionate understanding and unflinching accountability. In our sessions, we learned to name the damage that had been done without becoming permanently defined by it. "Your family experienced a profound betrayal," she observed during an early session, "not just from Amanda, but in some ways, from each other." Acknowledging that pain is essential before authentic healing can begin. Those acknowledgments came in different forms for each family member. My father, always more comfortable with action than words, threw himself into practical security measures not just for our homes and finances, but for our emotional well-being as well. He began checking in with each family member regularly, simple texts or calls that communicated his steady presence without requiring dramatic expressions of feeling. My mother's journey proved more complicated. Her shame at having rejected her own daughter in favor of a manipulative stranger created a barrier she struggled to overcome. Her initial attempts at reconnection were hesitant, almost fearful, elaborate meals prepared but served with anxious glances, as if expecting rejection at any moment. The breakthrough came unexpectedly during a mundane Sunday afternoon. I had come to the main house to help with some garden planning, and my mother suddenly put down her tea, hands trembling. "I need to say this properly," she began, voice breaking. "I failed you in the most fundamental way a mother can fail. I chose someone else over my own child. I locked you out literally and figuratively. I believed horrible lies about you without ever giving you the chance to defend yourself." Tears streamed down her face as she continued, "I can't undo that, but I want you to know that I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt your place in this family again." The rawness of her pain, the complete absence of excuses or qualifications, created space for something I hadn't fully allowed myself to feel: my own grief at having been so completely abandoned by the person I had trusted most. We cried together that afternoon, not in the dramatic catharsis of movies, but in the quiet, honest acknowledgement of profound hurt and genuine remorse. My brother Ethan's role in our healing proved unexpectedly central. Less emotionally entangled than our parents, he often served as translator between generations, helping our parents understand my perspective when emotions ran too high for direct communication. "They're terrified of making another mistake," he explained during one of our private conversations, "of saying the wrong thing and driving you away again, even though they were the ones who drove you away in the first place. The fear makes them awkward." This insight helped me approach our rebuilding with greater patience, recognizing that my parents' sometimes stilted attempts at reconnection stemmed from fear rather than indifference. Similarly, Ethan helped our parents understand my need for independence wasn't rejection, but healthy adulthood. As months passed, we established new boundaries and expectations. I maintained my separate residence in the guest house rather than moving back into the family home, creating physical space that reflected our emotional reality: connected but distinct, interdependent but autonomous. Family traditions resumed with thoughtful modifications. Sunday dinners became regular fixtures again, but we alternated locations between the main house and my space, symbolically acknowledging the equal importance of each family member's territory. Holiday celebrations returned, but with explicit discussions beforehand about expectations and limitations. The most profound change, however, came in how we communicated about difficulties. Where once problems had been minimized or avoided to maintain a facade of perfect family harmony, we now addressed concerns directly and honestly. When work demands required me to miss a family gathering, I explained my situation without apology or guilt. When my parents worried about my absence, they expressed their feelings without accusation or manipulation. My career recovered and even flourished in this new environment of authentic support. With emotional stability restored, I channeled renewed energy into professional growth, eventually earning a promotion that necessitated occasional travel, a development my family now celebrated rather than resented. "We're proud of you," my father said simply when I shared the news. "Your success isn't a threat to our connection. It's the result of the foundation we built together." The wider family circle gradually healed as well. Relationships with extended family members that Amanda had systematically damaged were carefully rebuilt. My mother reached out to her sister, my Aunt Linda, acknowledging how completely she had been manipulated into severing that important connection. My father rekindled relationships with old friends who had been systematically excluded from our lives. Perhaps most significantly, our experience has made us more discerning about relationships in general. We've become more attuned to authenticity, more appreciative of honest imperfection than flawless performance. We've learned to question narratives that too perfectly mirror our desires or fears, recognizing them as potential manipulation rather than serendipity. I won't pretend the healing is complete or perfect. There are still moments when doubt creeps in, when a missed call triggers disproportionate anxiety, when old wounds feel suddenly fresh. Trust, once shattered, rebuilds slowly, not in dramatic gestures, but in consistent, reliable presence over time. But with each passing month, the painful episode with Amanda recedes further into our past, while the lessons remain firmly integrated into our present. We've emerged with greater appreciation for what we nearly lost and deeper commitment to protecting what we've rebuilt. If there's wisdom to be gained from our painful experience, perhaps it's this. True belonging isn't found in perfect performance or meeting idealized expectations. It's built through honest connection that acknowledges both our strengths and limitations, that allows for growth and change without threatening fundamental acceptance. Amanda offered my family the illusion of perfect love, the flawless daughter who never disappointed, never challenged, never required accommodation of inconvenient independence. But that perfection was hollow, a calculated performance designed to extract rather than contribute. Real love messy, imperfect, occasionally frustrating, but ultimately reliable proved stronger than the perfect illusion. Our authentic but flawed connections withstood manipulation that might have permanently destroyed many families. That resilience gives me hope, not just for our continued healing, but for anyone experiencing similar betrayal. So if you're watching this and struggling with family estrangement, with rejection that doesn't make sense, with relationships damaged by manipulation, please know that healing is possible. It may not look like what you expected, may not follow the timeline you hoped for, may require difficult boundaries and uncomfortable truths. But authentic connection can survive even profound betrayal if we're willing to do the hard work of rebuilding with honesty and patience. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you experienced family manipulation or unexpected rejection? What helped you heal or reconnect? Your insights might help someone else navigating similar painful territory. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more conversations about family dynamics, manipulation recognition, and rebuilding authentic connections. Thank you for sharing this journey with me. And remember, real love may not be perfect, but it's infinitely more valuable than perfect pretense.